number 6.
I am not a number. I am a free man.
Welcome to Bow Ties Are Sometimes Cool with myself, Ashley, and Ed. Hello, Ed.
Good evening, Ash.
Now, tonight we are joined by a very special guest, Rick Davy. Hello, Rick.
Hi, Ash. Hi, Ed. Hi, everybody listening. Lovely to speak to you.
Now, Rick is joining us because, as you may have guessed, tonight's episode is about The Prisoner. But who is Rick? Well, for those of you that don't know, here's Rick's bio. Rick Davy is a writer and researcher originally from London but now living in Wales. Rick first saw The Prisoner during a repeat run in the early 1980s at age 10 and was immediately fascinated by the series as well as its star and creator Patrick McGoohan. And of course the mysterious village of Portmeirion, where the series was filmed. Rick now runs the world's largest and most popular website devoted to the series, the Unmutual website. Rick has spent the last 30 years researching the series, writing the book The Prisoner, The Essential Guide, and the official 50th anniversary BluRay and DVD text commentaries for every episode for Network in 2017. Rick has also contributed to countless other publications, including the ITC Quiz Book Playboys, Spies and Private Eyes, inspired by ITC. The first 2 volumes of It Means What It Says, Trying to Understand the Prisoner, and Titan's book, The Prisoner, the original art edition. Rick is also the host of Elstree Studio reunion events to The Prisoner and other ITC series. So with that in mind, I think we can probably safely say that Rick is a Prisoner expert, and we are delighted that he's joining us. Now, I'm quite new to The Prisoner. I just started watching it last year after Ed's recommendation, but I know Ed has been watching it for many years and a big fan. And so as such, this evening will be hosted, if you like, by Ed, who I know has got some questions, and hopefully Rick will give us his take on things. So we're handing over to Ed.
Thanks very much for that, Ash. I've been a fan of The Prisoner since 1992. My college roommate actually had a few episodes on VHS. He let me borrow the first one, which had Arrival and Chimes of Big Ben, and sort of by the halfway through Arrival, I was absolutely hooked on it. Got completely obsessed with the mystery behind it. And then, being pre-streaming days, no local shops sold the VHSs, so I had to go all the way on the train to Manchester to get the VHS of Fallout so I could see the final episode. That's how obsessed I was. But gentleman we've got tonight though, Rick, I mean, has taken it to another level, and he runs the biggest Prisoner fan site called the Unmutual. Rick, what gave you the incentive to start the Unmutual?
I didn't start it. I took it over, but it was very small when it started. It was a chap called Lou Stringer, who is a name that some of your listeners might recognise. He's a cartoonist, worked for Oink, Viz and the Beano, and currently does the little strip in Doctor Who magazine that you get at the bottom of the letters page. It's like I think it's called the Daft Dimension. Lou Stringer actually started the Unmutual in 2001. What he wanted to do was kind of early days of the internet. There wasn't much out there about The Prisoner. And over the years, there have been sort of fan clubs and books you could buy. But of course, all of that costs money. And with the birth of the internet, he thought to himself, it's such a great series. Why is there not a resource on the internet that people can just access for free? So he started up as just a sort of a one-page blog, really. And he found that very quickly he was getting inundated with stories, with people saying, oh, I love this show. Here's how I, got into it. People telling them his stories. And he just found it quite overwhelming, really. So I said, I've got a little bit of time. I'll take it over, Lou. So within a sort of a year or so of him setting up this one-page blog, I decided to turn it into a larger thing with interviews and news and reviews and kind of expand it from them. And I did so because The Prisoner, to me, it really is a unique experience. And I think it needs to be celebrated and passed down through the generations. It's great that your college friend was able to introduce you to it. I was introduced to it by my older brothers. I've introduced my kids to it. I think without people passing it on, I think it would be lost. And I think what I try and do with the website and the other things that I've done is just to try and keep the word out there that there is a show out there that's kind of unique. It's never been bettered. It sort of threw down a gauntlet that no one's ever followed, really, as to this is what you can do with a television series. I think other people have tried. There are great shows out there, of course. Twin Peaks comes to mind, of course, as to being something enigmatic and intriguing. But I think The Prisoner is totally unique in that it can be watched on so many levels. On one level, it's entertainment. We could just watch it as a great spy yarn with a weekly girl and a weekly punch up if we want to. But if we want to go further, we can watch it as a deep allegorical teaching, if you like, of this is what is happening in the world around us. This is what the world around us does to us. And it's just as relevant now in 2022 as it was when it was made, probably more so relevant, to be honest, than the time that it was made. So I think with the website, what I want to try and do is just kind of carry on a legacy for it, if you like. I think it would be a shame if The Prisoner just disappeared into the mists of time and new people weren't brought to it, because I think it's such an important piece of work. So that's what I tried to do with it, really. But kudos must go to Lou for originally setting up the website. And I've just sort of carried on his initial good work, really.
When I was introduced to The Prisoner by my friend, it was something I was aware of, but I'd never seen it, didn't know anything about it. Living in North Wales, I knew about the Portmeirion connection, etc. You said, Rick, that your brothers introduced you to The Prisoner. Was this something you were aware of in the back of your mind as part of sort of pop culture at the time, or was this something completely new to you?
This was something completely new. I was 10 years old. It was 1983. My brothers are both older than me, one 10 years older, one 5 years older. The one that was 10 years older was kind of about 20 at that point. He'd seen The Prisoner in the late 70s on the ITV repeats. And he basically came up to myself and my other brother and said, ask your mum if you can stay up Monday night. There's a thing on, I think you'll enjoy it. So I was 10 years old, but I was kind of into slightly left field kind of television stuff that maybe 10-year-olds weren't watching. Sapphire and Steel being one example. Blake Seven being another. I love Doctor Who, of course. What 10-year-old doesn't or didn't at that time in the early 80s? And I liked Star Trek and stuff like that, kind of more mainstream stuff, and obviously the A-Team and all the things that 10-year-olds were enjoying. Well, my brother knew that I liked some things to be a bit different. I like to be, even at 10, challenged by the TV I was watching. So I asked my mum if we could stay up. We did. I watched it, and a bit like yourself, very early on during arrival, I just looked at it and I'm thinking, I've never seen anything like this before. What on earth am I watching? I had to ask myself that. We were lucky enough to be a family that had a video recorder. So as well as watching, I was taping the episode. I had an Akai top loading VHS, whatever happened to top loaders. But it was a bit temperamental in that you didn't know if it had successfully recorded a program until after it had finished. Because sometimes it would record sound and no picture. Sometimes it would record picture and no sound. Sometimes it would record neither and you just end up with a load of fuzz. Luckily, Arrival did tape successfully. So I watched it on the night, went to school the next day, being a bit tired because 11 o'clock at night was a bit late for a 10-year-old to be staying up. Watched it when I got home from school the next day on VHS and thought to myself, this is telling me something. The Prisoner was asking me questions about myself and about the world around me that a television program had never done before, and I would argue probably hasn't done since. The second episode came on a week later. I don't know if you're aware, but Channel 4 in the early 80s decided to use the warehouse order for the episodes. So kind of the episode orders were a bit mixed up. And Many Happy Returns was the second episode shown by Channel 4. Fantastic episode. Probably shouldn't be watched second, but when you're 10 years old, you don't know any different. Watch that, and I thought, this is just astonishing. I've just watched a TV program where the first half of the episode, nobody speaks. But yet I was still absolutely glued to it. I thought, this is just astonishing. And, my brother was 5 years older than me, so probably got a few more of the nuances of what was going on than probably I did, age 10. But he agreed with me and said, this is telling us something. We're supposed to read more into this than this is just a guy who's in prison and wants to get out. So as each week went on, obviously we were completely hooked. Unfortunately, the old video recorder started to lapse a bit about halfway through, and I didn't end up with many of the last 7 or 8 episodes at all. So for several years, really, your formative years between sort of 10 and 13, I had half the episodes, but not the other half. And although I'd watched Once Upon a Time and Fallout on transmission in 83 or early 84 by the time those 2 episodes were shown, I didn't have them to go back to and rewatch. But I did have the other episodes. There are some episodes that I watched 10, 15 times. When you're a kid, you rewatch everything over and over again, don't you? I've seen that with my own kids. You buy them a DVD and they've watched it 4 times before the week is out. And it was only when the official video release in 85, 86 from Channel 5 Video came around that I really started to kind of fully understand, because I could watch Fallout a second time and a third time and a fourth time. And it's lived with me ever since. And it's always been an incredibly important part of my life, in that it's very rare for media of any sort, music, film, television, to kind of ask you questions. Television and film and music doesn't particularly do that, but The Prisoner does that, in not only in every episode, but as overall as a series. Asks you so much about yourself and asks you to question the things around you. And that's how I've lived my life since I've watched it. And I have to thank the program for that. So I have to thank my brother for saying, oh, there's something on tomorrow night, you might enjoy it.
So on the back of that, do you recall the moment when The Prisoner for you went from being a TV program you really like to the TV program you really like?
Oh, that's a brilliant question. Do you know, I think it was as early as the second episode. The first episode I thought was incredibly intriguing and great. I think it was when I watched Many Happy Returns. I thought, I've never seen anything like this. Yes, I was 10. There's a lot I hadn't seen, but I lived with 2 older brothers, so I've been exposed to quite a lot of stuff even at that age. I think it was during Many Happy Returns, and I just thought to myself, I've never seen anything like this. And I had a feeling then that I wouldn't ever see anything like it again. And I've been proved right. I'm approaching 50. I've never seen anything like it since. So I think it was at that point, during Many Happy Returns, episode 2. I'm sure if Chimes with Big Ben had been the second one that I'd seen, which was the second one that most people would have seen second, I probably would have felt the same thing. It was just that Arrival sets the scene, gives you the intrigue, and then whatever episode you put as episode 2, that's then building on that, and you're thinking, wow, I'm immersed in this now. And I've kind of been immersed in it ever since.
And you sort of alluded to the episode order being fluid, and there are many, theories of what order is the best order to watch the episodes in. But that's interesting, Many Happy Returns being second, because it is such a good episode and so unlike Arrival. I mean, I might, on my next watch through, watch Many Happy Returns second based on that, just to see what sort of feeling it gives. So from your biog, you say you've contributed to The Prisoner DVD and BluRay, the text on those. How did you get involved?
Yeah, well, it's interesting you asked that. It was started off really with, Network, as you know, are a fantastic company. They release all the ITC shows, The Saint, The Persuaders, Return of the Saint, Thriller, Champions, all of the ITC stuff, most of the Jerry Anderson stuff. And they were doing The Prisoner 40th anniversary set. So this would have been around 2007. And at that point, I was helping to organise events in Portmeirion for The Prisoner, along with the organisation PrisBiz. And we decided to invite Network along. We hear you're doing this 40th anniversary set. Come along to Portmeirion, talk to us about it. And they came along, and I was asked to kind of have a look at what they were doing and provide my opinion on what they were putting together. And from then, I got a sort of relationship struck up with Network, so that 10 years later, when they did the 50th anniversary, they said to me, we'd love you to contribute to the set. What would you like to do? And I thought, well, you've done a book. Andrew Pixley's probably the man for your cult TV. I know he's very popular in Doctor Who circles as well. Used to write the archive sections for the Doctor Who magazine and so on. I was aware that the Doctor Who DVD range had these text commentaries, info text, where every episode you could click those on if you wanted to. And every sort of 7 or 8 seconds, a fact about what you were watching on screen, or an interview quote or something would come at the bottom of the screen. And I just suggested, why can't we do that? It's never been done before. I said, go for it, do that. Have you got anything else? So I said, well, I've got some behind the scenes footage from The Prisoner as well that I've got a sort of 8mm film. Stick that on there. So it kind of turned into a bit of a free for all, in terms of, no pun intended, in terms of, let's see what we can get on this set that no one will have ever had before. So we did text commentaries, behind the scenes footage, unseen photos, trying to make it as ultimate a set as we could. Basically, the idea was that I thought, what would people enjoy that they haven't had before? Everyone's seen books, everyone's had audio commentaries. I thought no one's had a text commentary where every few seconds get something interesting on the screen, whether it's a continuity error, or a quote from the cast, or just a piece of production info, I thought people might enjoy them. The feedback's been very nice, actually. I think people have enjoyed what we put together for that set. The behind-the-scenes story of the making of the series is almost as sort of interesting as the final episodes itself. It really is a fascinating production story. Ed, you probably read into it yourself quite a bit. If you're a fan, you know the various different ways that certain ideas were come up with, and the frantic way they were trying to get the series finished is really a fascinating story in itself, almost as fascinating as the finished episodes are.
So this question now is sort of going back to something you said earlier, and it's about the program as it's viewed from different people. I suppose viewing it from different angles, people will see different things. So in your opinion, is 6 actually John Drake? Does the village actually exist physically, or is it all an allegory, or is it generally just all things to all viewers?
Okay, well, the third aspect is absolutely the first thing that is true. It's whatever you take from it. So if you want to believe that number 6 is, I don't know, a telephone salesman from Bootle, then that's absolutely your right to think that, because the whole point of the series is that where to watch it and where to take something from it. My own personal opinion is that the whole series is an allegory. Without the allegory, I think all it is a straightforward spy series about a man held captive. Now, if you speak to George Markstein, who was the story editor and supposed co-creator of the series, that's all he wanted in the first place. And if he'd have been left solely in charge, that's all we would have ended up with. We would have ended up with, you know, a series like The Saint or Gideon's Way or whatever, a very straightforward, you know, which way did they go thriller type series. I think with Patrick McGoohan, what Patrick McGoohan added was an allegory. The village is all around us. It's not just about this man and an Italian little village. This is about the whole world and how, you know, state control and media control and all the different aspects that you see in The Prisoner, you know, take over our lives, not just number 6's life. So the allegory is incredibly important. Your first question is very interesting. Is number 6 John Drake? Well, technically he is if it's an allegory, because number 6 is therefore representing all of us. So he's John Drake, he's you, he's me, he's Tony Blair, whichever figure you want to throw into the air. He represents every single human being. But if you want to analyze it properly, my personal opinion, I know lots of people feel that he is John Drake. My personal opinion is that he isn't. And I'll tell you why. Firstly, I think that devalues the message of the series if he is one person. I think the whole point of the allegory is that he is all of us. I think if you say number 6 is Mr. X or Mr. Y, I think you then lose a bit of the point of the series. My second point is, if you look at the two characters, number 6 lives in a different house to the house that John Drake lived in. Number 6 works at a different office to the office that John Drake worked in. Number 6 drives a different car to the car that John Drake drove. Number 6 works for different people to the people that John Drake worked for. Number 6 is engaged. John Drake clearly wasn't. John Drake is an absolute unflappable gentleman. Number 6, much as we love him and he's the hero, he's a grumpy, misogynistic, fairly unpleasant individual. I don't think Drake could ever be thought of as bad-tempered like number 6 would be. So all the character traits that the two characters have are completely different. Now, that's not to say if someone wants to think they're the same character, they're both supposedly secret agents, although it's never actually stated in The Prisoner that number 6 is a secret agent, but we assume that they are. So they have the same clothes, they obviously look the same and have the same voice. If you park the half-hour Danger Man episodes where he's, you know, Irish American, there are similarities, but I think there's too many things that make their characters different. If they were played by a different actor, we'd never be saying they're the same. It's only because it's Patrick McGoohan that people say, well, it's got to be the same guy. And if you watched it at the time, well, you would have obviously thought that. 1 minute he is John Drake, and the next minute, a similar character played by the same actor who's got a similar job is being imprisoned in the next series 6 months later that you see on screen. Perfectly natural for people to think they're the same. But I think when you analyse it, I think there's too many things that are different about the two characters. And of course, without Patrick McGoohan, we wouldn't have the series, we wouldn't have the allegory. And he was adamant that the two characters were not the same. So I think if we can't take his word for that, then whose word can we take? But that is my personal opinion. And as we've said all along and said a few minutes ago, you take what you want from it. So if someone out there wants to think they're John Drake and number 6 are the same, absolutely, and I applaud them for thinking that. If they want to think John Drake is actually Howard Wilson, the Prime Minister at the time. Sorry, number 6 is Howard Wilson. Absolutely, he can think that. If you want to think number 6 is just representing the man at the bottom, the working class man, absolutely you can think that. Because if you start to say, this is what The Prisoner's about, and this isn't what The Prisoner's about, you then lose the point of it. The point is that each person needs to watch it for themselves, take what they think from it, and then run with it however they want to run with it. Yes, there are things which are factual. So, production facts we know exist. So we know that number 6's house is at X address. We know that because, we know it, if that makes sense. But things that are there to be interpreted, you can't say that one thing is for sure right and one thing is for sure wrong, because it's open to interpretation. My own opinion is that they're not the same. I don't know how you feel. I'd love to hear your thoughts on who number 6 is. Of course, in one episode, he says his name is Peter Smith, which is Many Happy Returns. And people say, well, that's obviously an alias. He's obviously making it up as he goes along. My argument to that is he's in a house. He's demanded to see the logbook of a car and the deeds to the house. Surely he would have to give his real name. Otherwise, the woman will go upstairs, get the deeds to the house and the logbook of the car and say, hang on a minute, you said your name was Peter Smith. It says John Drake on here. So I'm of the view that his name could be Peter Smith, or at least his official alias was Peter Smith. So that's just an aside to throw in. But I'd love to hear who you think number 6 is.
I think he's an everyman character. He, like you said, he's all of us. You can project whatever you like on him, because at some point in our lives, in a certain way, we all go through some of the struggles that number 6 has endured. I mean, obviously not being trapped in a village and chased by a great big bouncy ball and beaten up, but sort of psychologically, we're all sometimes in really, really bad places.
Absolutely. Allegorically, we have been imprisoned and chased by a big ball and beaten up. Allegorically, we absolutely, all of us have. Whether that's struggling to pay an energy bill, whether that's, you can't get a job, anything in life that can be thrown at you is the allegorical, you're trapped, you feel trapped, you can't get out. The big bouncing ball is stopping you from doing something. Absolutely, everyone in every walk of life at some point has been a number 6.
I thought. Well, I was going to say I'm not sure. I don't actually know, but I thought I read somewhere that the chap, was it Mark Stein,
George Mark
co-creator, had actually said that he was John Drake.
He did, absolutely, and that's because he was thinking on very linear levels. He wanted a spy show. He didn't want an allegorical show. That's why he quit after 13 episodes. He didn't like what McGoohan was doing with it. He didn't like the allegory. So yeah, if you take his word for it, absolutely, he's John Drake. But I think that McGoohan wanted something deeper than it's a spy. He's imprisoned. He's trying to get out. Mark Stein did indeed say that it was definitely John Drake. That's what the series was about. But if you ask George Mark Stein what Fallout was about, he just said it was rubbish and a mess. So you take the rough with the smooth with George Mark Stein. Yeah.
Okay, this is the boring question. This is the boring question, but I'm sure you won't give us a boring answer, Rick. Favorite episode and why?
Oh, that's not a boring question. I love talking about my favorite episode. My favorite episode doesn't often get mentioned as a favorite episode. It's Checkmate. The reason Checkmate is my favorite episode is that I think it encompasses everything that I love about The Prisoner. I'm going to mention Fallout now before I tell you why I love Checkmate. Without Fallout, you don't get The Prisoner. You just get this straightforward spy show. If it had ended in, ta-da, here is, the Roger Moore type character who's in charge of the village, it would have been a very boring series. You have to have Fallout, and you have to have Arrival, because Arrival is the best first episode of any series ever made. So you have to have the two bookends. So we put them to one side. The reason I love Checkmate is that it encompasses everything I love about the series. So it's got the allegory in it of, we're all pawns, we're all being controlled and so forth. It's got that in it. It's got brilliantly written. I think it's a great nod to the Great Escape, with these escape committees that meet up and try and work out a way out of the prison camp, that type of thing, which I love. So I love the allegory there. It's got a lot of Portmeirion in it. I think the episodes that have lots of Portmeirion are slightly stronger episodes, because I think the place is fantastic and a beautiful venue for the series. It's got a great guest cast. You've got Ronald Rad, Rosalie Crutchley. I think Peter Wingard's brilliant as number 2. So you've got that. You've got a punch up in it. You've got a lot of intrigue as to is he going to get out. You've got a twist at the end. I think it's got all the things in it which The Prisoner is. It's got Rover in it, so it's got all the elements of The Prisoner in one episode. Apart from Arrival, I don't think you get an episode that has all of that in.
I was watching not so long ago. I was watching an interview actually with Patrick McGoohan, and I just actually find him as an individual just fascinating. It was a little bit about how he was how did you go about pitching it to the TV network and what have you, and I find him fascinating as an individual.
He's an absolutely fascinating man. Very private man, as you know. He wasn't one of these celebrity type of actors. He kept himself very much to himself, and he put all his thoughts and views into his work, which is why The Prisoner is kind of sort of autobiographical in a way. It's just as much about his struggle as an actor to be a prisoner of danger man as it is about anything else as an actor. Once Upon a Time especially is fairly autobiographical, apparently. And he was a fascinating man. And if you speak to his daughter, she says that so much of him as a person ends up on the screen. And we talked earlier on about who is number 6. Number 6 is Patrick McGoohan just as much as anybody else, as an individual. And he was fascinating. And he didn't do that much after The Prisoner, really. I don't know. I've never really come to grips with why that is. Yes, he made some films. Some of them were poor. Some of them are very good. He did a few episodes of Columbo. He did one other very short-lived series called Rafferty. But he didn't, like Roger Moore, go on to have, a career where every year he'd have this blockbuster, mega-selling feature film come out. He picked his roles very, very, very seldomly and, very particularly. And I have a lot of respect for that. He could have sold out. He could have just done the big bucks thing, but he didn't want to. He was offered roles in Harry Potter. He was offered The Saint. He was offered James Bond twice, all of which he turned down. And I think that's to his credit, because he knew what he believed in, and he did that. And so few actors really do that. Actors claim they do, but really at the end of the day, they're after the big roles, aren't they? Whereas McGoohan never was. And I think it was Kenneth Griffith, who appears in a couple of episodes of The Prisoner, that said that he could have been the world's biggest star, but he wouldn't play the game. And I've got a lot of respect for that.
That little interview that I was just referencing, you could sort of tell that straight away, really, because he was just talking about things, and they were sort of saying, well, you don't like being controlled. And he goes, no, I'm being controlled here today. When I came in, they said they could, I need to do this, I need to do that. So, yeah, he had his way of doing things, is my impression. And
he didn't suffer fools. He didn't suffer fools gladly. And again, that's to his credit. Some people have spoken about him being difficult to work with. I bet the only people that found him difficult to work with, there was a reason for that. Apart from one exception, there's one Prisoner episode, It's Your Funeral, where Patrick does seem to have lost control of himself a little bit. He upset a few of the cast and crew on that one. We put that aside. Everyone that was I would say was really decent. Aside from that episode where, as I say, he did go out of line a couple of times. Everyone else that's worked with him that knew what they were doing has tremendous respect for him. And they had tremendous respect for him because he wanted things done a certain way, and there's nothing wrong in doing it. The crew members on The Prisoner absolutely loved Patrick. They adored him because he knew what he was doing and he appreciated their work. You talk to Eric Mivel, the music editor. You talk to Tony Sloman, the librarian on the series. You talk to the editors. They all had tremendous respect for him. The thing about Patrick is that by the end of the series, he was literally doing everything. So he was directing, he was writing, he was in the editing suite helping to edit, he was helping to choose music. He was running the whole show on his own. Mark Stein had gone, a lot of the original crew members had gone, he was doing everything himself. So although he was absolutely in control of everything, nobody saw him as being controlling in a negative way. You speak to all the crew members on those last couple of episodes, they just talk about someone who was dedicated and incredibly talented. If you watch Once Upon a Time, which although was shown penultimately, was actually the 6th to be filmed, if you look at the dedication that those two actors are putting into that performance, that's above and beyond acting, in my opinion. That's a tour de force of television. I think so much of that episode and Fallout, you could say the same thing about. Alexis Canner in that final episode is absolutely superb. Kenneth Griffith, brilliant. Patrick McGoohan himself, although he didn't have much to say for the first half, gives a fantastic performance throughout. and it's brilliantly written. I think it's a work of genius. Some people will turn around and say, I didn't understand a word of it. Thought it jumped the shark. Thought it was awful. The last episode. I disagree. I think it's just a work of genius, and that's all down to Patrick McGoohan, because he wrote practically every word of that, apart from the president's speech, which Ken Griffith allegedly wrote that himself. McGoohan wrote every word of that, and I think, you know, I tip my hat to him as being an incredible individual. And I've got so much respect for the fact that he didn't sell himself out, didn't do the celebrity thing that he could have done, kept himself to himself, loyal to his family. You know, I've got so much respect for him. And I think that interview you point to, which is known as the Warner Troyer interview, which is available online and also on the 50th anniversary set, I think you see a lot of McGoohan himself in that. As you say, there's a great bit where, you know, does it annoy you that you're controlled? He goes, yes, slightly. I had to sign in, as you say. And it's a great little bit of, you see a bit of him. But that's what made The Prisoner what it was. As I say, much as I respect George Markstein and the brilliant work he did on The Prisoner, if it had been left to him, it just would have been a spy action adventure series. Nothing wrong with the spy action adventure series. I'm a big devotee of a lot of ITC series, but I think The Prisoner is something different. It's something beyond your average action series.
I'm still getting to grips with it, really, if I'm honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, there's nothing wrong in that.
There's
I
that,
know people who love The Prisoner, are superb devotees of The Prisoner. They've even written books about The Prisoner. You hate Fallout, and I can understand that, or just don't get Fallout, or they really struggle with it, and I absolutely respect that. I think Fallout, like The Prisoner as a whole, to be honest, is something that either it grabs you or it doesn't, and it's fine if it doesn't. It doesn't make you any less of a fan or less of a person or less of anything in particular. It either grabs you and you kind of are in tune with it, or it's not. And it's absolutely fine for you to be struggling with it. Don't ever apologize for that. There's no right or wrong in any of the scenes in Fallout. You can't look at a scene in Fallout and say, that's what that's about. As long as you think you're getting something from it, then the job's done. If you're struggling with it, that's not a problem. That's an answer in itself. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When I think of it like that now, I'm going to go back and watch it again. It's just giving me a totally different take on it. I know Ed is a big fan of it. And Ed was like, this is wonderful. This is wonderful. And don't get me wrong. Sorry, forgive me. I'm not saying it's not wonderful. I'm sure it is. But it's just a case of, you know, I'm just being honest in the sense that I'm still getting to grips with it. But I will revisit it. And watch
there
that
are people
again.
I know that have been watching that series for 50 years and they're still getting to grips with it. So don't feel that you're alone or that you've missed something. You haven't. It's just that it hasn't connected with you in the same way that it has with myself and Ed and people that do think it's a sort of work of genius. It's fine not to think that. And I do get upset with some aspects of Prisoner fandom, in that people do kind of put themselves up as to say, this is what it's about, and if you're not going to listen to me, then you're wrong. And they've completely missed the point if they do that. You know, as I say, there are factual things about The Prisoner that can't be argued. So, you know, which car did he drive? Where was the house? All these sorts of things. They're factual things. But when it comes to interpreting something, there's no right or wrong answers. You can lean towards one way, you can lean towards another way. You can be confused by it. It's absolutely fine. I would just say to you, try and watch it afresh. Sometimes you can get bogged down in it because you're almost trying too hard to try and get something from it. Some of it may well have just been written as to say, well, you know, I've got to put something in this scene, I'll write this. Some of it is just padding. You know, you don't have to read something into everything that's right or wrong. You just read what you want to read into it. The stuff that you don't get, just park it. Just put it to one side and say, I don't get that. So I'm not gonna enjoy that. I'm just gonna enjoy the rest of it. And you'll enjoy it more for that experience. You get bogged down in every single line of dialogue and saying, did he mean something by that? Then you're just gonna, you know, trip over yourself. Don't do that. Just watch it afresh and enjoy it for what it is. Did you feel when you got to Fallout that you wanted all the questions to be answered? You know, who is number one? Who is number 6? Whose side are they on? Did you want all that answered when you got to the last episode?
I suppose I suppose in some ways I did, and that's kind of also perhaps the genius of the series, though, isn't it? In the sense that it is that, you know, like, yeah, but maybe that is kind of part of it. I think that's just the way we're made to think these days, isn't it? You've got to have everything boxed off. It's all got to make sense. It's all got to tie together.
I'm glad you said that. Excuse me. I'm glad you said that, because I felt exactly that as well. I mean, I was only 10. I don't know how I would have been if I'd have watched it later on in life for the first time. But yeah, I wanted all those answers. But funnily enough, when I watched Fallout, I'd love to hear Ed's view on this. When I watched Fallout, it didn't bother me that I didn't have the answers fed to me on a plate. I think that's why I liked it, because it wasn't all served up as to say, da-da! That's what that is. That's what that is. That's what that is. I ended the episode. There was a documentary after it with some interviews with McGoohan and others. Watched that. And then I remember sitting up late with my brother for probably another hour or so. I was 10 years old. So we're talking 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning now, which is a lot for a 10-year-old to do. I remember sitting there going, oh, we don't know that, do we? And he goes, no, we don't know. Let's talk about it. And I've been talking about it ever since.
But yeah, what are your thoughts, Ed?
Well, my thoughts on the Prisoner and Fallout in particular. I watch a lot of I've seen a lot of films over the years that are sort of puzzle box mystery films with a central mystery to them. But once the central mystery's been solved in all of them bar two, once the central mystery's been solved, they're almost diminished. Give you Psycho, for example. Once you've watched it, great film, but once you know that the killer is Norman Bates dressed as his mother, that's all it'll ever be, is Norman Bates dressed as his mother. You watch it 1,000 times, the killer will always be Norman Bates dressed as his mother. The Prisoner, and you alluded to before, Rick, and Twin Peaks are actually embellished rather than diminished by you knowing everything, but by you having seen all the episodes, because it gives you more questions than answers. It makes you use your brain. It makes you think. It tells you a lot about the human condition. It is quite. Fallout is quite a challenging piece of television. The first time I saw it, when you get to the bit where McGoohan, number 6, pulls the mask off number 1, then it's the monkey face, then he pulls it off again, and it's number 6's face. And I had to rewind the VHS because obviously on a small old colour portable TV, you couldn't quite make out what had actually happened. So I thought, oh, it's him. Oh, okay, let's go with this. And then I saw how it actually panned out and ended. And it ended, it's almost cyclical. It ends as it begins. And that was like, oh, that's fantastic. And then I got the VHSs out and I binge watched the whole thing again. And the only other program that's done that with me really was since then is Twin Peaks. But if it wasn't for The Prisoner, I probably wouldn't have got my interest in Twin Peaks and David Lynch's work, because how McGoohan made The Prisoner sort of almost open pathways into my mind as to what film and television can actually be. So yeah, I think Fallout is a work of art. It is a genuine work of art. Absolutely, I totally agree with everything you said there, and I love the fact that you mentioned that it is cyclical. You know, you get to the end of Fallout and it's back to the beginning. And you know, we talked earlier on about the episode ordering, and that there's always been a debate as to what's the best order to watch the episodes. One theory is that you watch Fallout first, and then watch Arrival and watch the rest of the episodes, because it just goes in a circle. And nothing had been done like that before then. I mean, there'd been some surreal series, things like Corridor People. Gurney Slade, I think, is a good example of surreal television from pre-Prisoner. But no, The Prisoner, there's never been anything like it before or since, really. Yes, Twin Peaks, as I say, is a good example to use. But even then, I'm not sure how much Twin Peaks teaches you about the world around you, and whether it kind of convinces you that what you're seeing in your real life is what you're seeing on screen at the same time. But I appreciate that it is absolutely intriguing as a TV series.
So Ed, I think you've got a couple more questions, I think.
Yeah, so obviously The Prisoner, often imitated, never bettered, but there have been, to my knowledge, 2 reimaginings. There's the 2009 reimagining with Jim Caviezel and Ian McKellen, and there was also what I think is a quite superb Nick Briggs reimagining for Big Finish. Have you got any opinions on either of those reimaginings?
Yeah, I do have quite strong opinions. The 2009 one, yeah, I mean, yes, it has good production values. Ian McKellen's very good, but I think it completely missed the point. I think it was a wasted opportunity. I'm not sure I'd ever want to see The Prisoner remade for television or film, because I think it would always miss the point. But I think this particularly missed the point, and I'll tell you why. The reason the original worked so well is that you had genius people all working together, creating something that happened as it did. It was like, they caught like the sun in a bottle. They were just there at the time. McGoohan had his firm ideas. Mark Stein came in with his brilliant writing and his brilliant script editing and so forth. He got together some fantastic writers who together got together with some fantastic crew, and they created something. If you'd have changed any element of that, it wouldn't have quite been the same. Problem with the 2009 remake is that they tried to be enigmatic. The thing about being enigmatic is that you don't try at that. You're either enigmatic or you're not. And that's what The Prisoner is. It is incredibly enigmatic. 2009 remake, they really tried to make it enigmatic. And when you try and do something, you're forcing it. And they forced that series. And it just didn't work. I didn't think the setting worked. I thought the lead actor, although he's been good in other roles, had no charisma for that number 6 role. I just didn't like it. The Big Finish reimagining, I'm with you, I really enjoyed it, especially the first series. I thought the first series was excellent. Well, the second series was very good. The third series, probably the weakest of the 3, but I still enjoyed it. I think the reason I enjoyed it is that it wasn't a direct copy. So even the episodes which had the same title were kind of very different to the original ones. So it was kind of a retelling or reimagining, sorry, rather than a retelling. I think when you try and retell something, that's when you kind of get stuck in the mud a bit. I think what Big Finish did was they made it different enough that you could view it as a separate series. So this was about a different guy called Number 6. It wasn't, Mark Elstob didn't play Patrick McGoohan. He played a character called Number 6 who was imprisoned in a strange village. I think that's how it worked, is that it was different enough from the original to stand on its own 2 feet. And I think some of particularly the episodes which weren't based on original episodes. There's a series 1 episode called My Beautiful Village, which I thought was superb. I think Nick Briggs, we did think did a really good job. Don't get me wrong, it's not the original series, but Nick didn't intend it to be. So he's not trying to say this is as good as the original, because he knows it is and knows it could never have been. But I think it's great, and I recommend everyone to listen to Big Finish stuff generally. I mean, the Doctor Who stuff, obviously everyone knows about. Their Callan adaptation is superb, and Callan's a great series for Prisoner fans to watch, because it's all about a man in isolation who's fighting the powers that be. And so I recommend Callan to everybody. But yeah, the 2009 remake, it completely missed the point to me. There are people out there that enjoy it. Good for them. I would never tell someone that they're wrong for saying it was good, but it just wasn't for me. I think it missed that point.
So you've Mutual, you've written a guidebook on The Prisoner as well, Rick.
Yeah, it's the Prisoner, the Essential Guide. Yeah, it's available from Portmeirion and from various bookshops and from Amazon or whatever. Yeah, just to give people the basics, really. I still maintain that the best book about the Prisoner is yet to be written. I don't think there's been the ultimate book with every little minutiae of what everything means, all the production details. That's still to be done. Andrew Pixley's books are very good, though. But yeah, I just wanted a little guide that people could dip into so that they understood, what's Rover, how's Rover made, where's Portmeirion, what's the car that he drives, the basics about the series. So that's available from Portmeirion and from, as I say, online stores and bookshops and so forth. Thank you for giving it a plug.
That's fine. We'll put a link to that in the description, so hopefully our listeners can become your readers.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you. I didn't do this to get plugs, but I'm very grateful for them all the same. I'll take the plugs where they come. Thanks very much, mate. Appreciate it.
No problem at all. So really, that's all my question. Is there anything you'd like to talk about, Rick?
No, it's been fascinating. I never tire of talking about The Prisoner. That's what makes it such a great series, isn't it? That 55 years on, we're still talking about it. People that watched it in 1967 are still talking about it 55 years on. Obviously, we are being very young people. We watched it obviously many years after the original broadcast. I don't think my wife would refer to me as being particularly young, but I'm gonna go with that. And it's great that we can still have these conversations where there's no right or wrong answer, and we can all just share what we feel about The Prisoner. What's great about this is that you talk about other shows, you could talk about Doctor Who and other things, and invariably you get 3 people in a room that end up in an argument. What's great about The Prisoner is that us 3 can just simply talk about it. All 3 of us have different views about who he is and what it means and what we take from Fallout or whatever. But we don't fall out over it, no pun intended, because we absolutely get that it's a very individual series, that you take something from as an individual. I think that's what Patrick intended. You know, there's a quote from him where he said, "I wanted people to come up to me in the street and wave their fists at me and shout, what was all this about?" He wanted that. He wanted people to be talking about this series, and by jolly, he did that, didn't he? That 55 years on, there's podcasts like yours, and there's books you can buy, and there's online forums and whatever discussing the hell out of this series, which I hope will never go away. And I think it's great that you guys have talked about this show, because I think that the more people you can get aware of it, and they can watch it on BritBox or buy the DVDs or Blu-rays or whatever, and get into this series, because I think it's an incredibly important piece of work, more important, I think, than any other piece of media that's ever been produced.
That's absolutely brilliant, Rick. So I just want to thank Rick for coming on tonight and sharing his vast knowledge and experience of being the fan of The Prisoner. I'm sure our listeners will really, really enjoy listening to what he's had to say.
Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure to be on, and I'd love to be on in the future if you're doing other shows about The Prisoner or Danger Man or any aspect of any ITC show that you think I might like to take part in. I'd love to be on again. I can never tire about talking about The Prisoner. It's a fascinating subject. And thank you both for having me. I appreciate it.
You're
Cheers,
very
Rick.
welcome. We've been Bow Ties Are Sometimes Cool. Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe. Bye for now.